We are Geekcentric, and you can be too. Love ya. Get home safe, guys. Peace.
Das Vidanya, and welcome to our spoiler-filled review and discussion on Marvel's Black Widow. Now, in our preview show, we kept it pretty simple, just talking about what worked and what didn't. But for today, we're actually going to be going much deeper into different elements of the film and share our thoughts on specific moments, characters, and details, as well as what we think of this movie and what it means for the MCU at large. So, with that said, if you haven't seen the movie yet, well, what are you doing? Get out of the red room and listen to our spoiler-free preview, then watch the movie, then come right back here for your next assignment, as this will definitely contain some spoilers. Now, before I get to, the synopsis and we get to the review, let me introduce you to my favorite, drug-controlled, super Russian spy. He's super tall. This is the first time I didn't have anything prepared. Justin.
Привет. Привет.
Привет.
Hello
What does that mean?
in
Is
Russian.
that hello?
Yeah.
Did you just look it up?
Привет. No.
You just looked.
That's-
No, you knew?
I knew
Wow,
that.
I didn't know you know Russian.
I know, and then как дела is how are you?
Oh,
Как дела.
Как дела. All right, interesting.
I'm probably butchering it, but yeah, I know a little bit of Russian. That's about
If any of our Russian listeners can write in and let us know.
Please.
Following the events of Captain America Civil War, Natasha Romanoff finds herself on the run and forced to confront a dangerous conspiracy with ties to her past. Pursued by a force that will stop at nothing to bring her down, Romanoff must deal with her history as a spy and the broken relationships left in her wake long before she became an Avenger. This movie stars Scarlett Johansson, Florence Pugh, David Harbour, William Hurt, Ray Winstone, and Rachel Weisz. So let's kind of start right at the top here. Let's start with the plot.
Yeah.
Justin, we've obviously this movie was pushed back, as we talked about in our preview episode, and I think a lot of people had a lot of anticipation for the first Phase 4 movie from Marvel. What did you think of the plot? What did you like? What were some of your favorite scenes and moments? Go for it.
Yeah. Well, I honestly, I think when I watched the movie, I looked at it through the lens of not as of right now. In the pandemic, I was like, okay, this was going to come after Endgame. This would have actually been a very refreshing movie. It would have just reminded us, where the MCU kind of started in its sort of Earth roots. It's very grounded story. But that being said, I do think that there are some flaws to this overall story that make it less of a send-off for the Black Widow character and more of an introduction to new characters. Now, it was great to get a little bit more of an origin story to a character that has been in like 6 or 7 different MCU films.
Sure.
Right off the bat, like being introduced to her at such a young age in good old 1985 Ohio. I think if I'm not mistaken, that's where it opens up. And, to see, a semblance of a family life, which would become like obviously a very underlining theme throughout the movie, but to know that that's how young she was, right? Like I think as an audience member watching it the first time, I was like, is she aware that she's like with Russian spies, right? And then once that reveal happens at the dinner table, and it's like, oh, so she's in on it. Like she knows that she's there for a mission, right? It's not just Alexei and Melina that are in on this whole thing. I also like how they played with the whole notion of Russians living amongst Americans. I guess it's not that it wasn't true, but I think that there was a lot of hysteria in and around the Cold War time, where, it was Russia infiltrating. We have shows like The Americans that also talks about that sort of stuff of like Russians living amongst Americans to kind of understand their way of life. So I liked that they implemented that into the MCU. I thought that was pretty clever, right? So,
yeah, I mean they've used big moments in history before with
Right.
Captain America, and
Yeah.
and we've seen that happen throughout the war, and fighting Nazis and things like that. So yeah, I think it's a great way to utilize that, and I think Marvel's done such a good job with that in the comics. So to see that in the movies makes a lot of sense, and I think the opening scenes, I really enjoyed, like, just the entire, even before getting to the title sequence, where we see sort of all these lovely little family moments, and then
Right.
they're juxtaposed with like the widow training at the Red Room, and we got that epic version of Teen Spirit by Nirvana. I thought, honestly, I liked it. I honestly really enjoyed that sequence, and I thought that was really cool how they sort of they didn't have to tell an entire huge story with her as a kid. They
No.
gave you the feeling and the understanding of what happened, and the cool thing is it doesn't just focus on her. It focuses on setting up this entire organization and all these girls that are affected by this.
Yeah.
So I thought that was really well done.
I think we've talked offline. I thought it was a little heavy-handed to go with the Smells Like Teen Spirit with a very sort of tragic, sort of depressive tone. It felt like it was just too on the nose for it. I think there was a lot that was conveyed, and I enjoyed the sort of, to your point, the montage sequence that helps to kind of create a passage of time to your point, to establish how big this organization got, and the villain Dreykov, how he's so like connected in governments, right? So
Right.
like it's already kind of setting the stage for what would be about, your bad guy and what this real situation is. I thought it was also very telling to kind of rip something that I think is relevant in today's news, with the idea that girls and kids getting kidnapped and being trafficked, if you will, and that's kind of where this sort of real element really ties into this story, is grounding it in something that does sort of affect us in today's life. I loved in the montage sequence too, just going back to that, how they showed setting up their false identities by like photographing Christmas and summer holiday, and you know what I mean, like in a studio, and like making it look like they were the American family. So
And
I
they
really
call out
liked,
to that further
later,
in the movie,
yeah,
when she talks about like,
Yeah.
I opened all the gifts even though I know there was nothing in it. I was so
Yeah.
excited for it.
Yeah.
And it's just like, it's
living
so
a lie. It's
Yeah.
living a lie, and like that's essentially what it really comes down to, right? So
And I also have to like just shout out like mad Incredibles vibes all throughout both the beginning of the movie, and then there's a sequence later on when Alexi's putting his suit back on and it barely fits, and I'm like, this is straight out of the Incredibles. This is Mr. Incredible putting his suit back on. But like I also wanted to shout out like just the design of the character, like in terms of like Natasha Romanoff when she's a little girl. I actually thought it was really cool and very subtle in terms of how they set her up with, she had like sort of this like really different looking haircut, obviously dyed in a certain way. And I think that was really to establish for, when you watch it the second time, you start to realize, oh my gosh, no, she's already been through the training. She's already been through the Red Room a little bit already. And so her living in, you said it was Ohio that they were in? Her living in Ohio, that's her making her own decisions. That's her never having the ability to change her hair or make her own decisions. So she does, and she kind of overdoes it, like most kids do when they. I had blue hair one time when I was a kid, right?
Yeah. No, that's a good way to look at it. See, on the flip side, the way I looked at it is that, is finding an identity. She doesn't really have an identity, and I think she's aware that she doesn't have an identity. Like, we'll come to see a little bit more later, like in the movie, about like, her mother and that there was a mother that she does vaguely remember, and that has a backstory. And, I think that still, knowing that she knew that, she's carrying that with her. But I think what the opening does is establishing, the semblance of a family. And as we go through the movie, we start to see that they're a dysfunctional family, right?
Yes.
Like they're very, disconnected, and I think that opening up with that, and as we move through the narrative, and we see, as much as she wants to reject them as, no, you weren't my family, we were just a mission, we were a team, that's all we were supposed to do. She comes to that realization that they are family. Yeah, like I think the start of this gets really good, and then once we get into it, I feel like it kind of speeds up, slows down throughout. After we get through that first introduction, we kick things off by just seeing that, she's on the run, she's hiding.
Thaddeus Ross is there, and he's.
Yep.
I really liked how they did that sort of.
Yeah.
They tricked us and Ross at the same time.
Same time.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. That was cool. Yeah.
It was really well done.
It was a lot of fun.
Yeah. And I just wanted to kind of jump ahead though to the introduction of Taskmaster. Like,
yes.
Did you jump? Because I jumped when that bomb went off, or whatever it was, a rocket
on
shot
the bridge,
her.
right? Yes.
On the bridge, I literally was like shocked out of my seat, and I thought it was so well done. Like, I think
it was a surprise. It was definitely a surprise.
I mean, I just think like his or her fighting style, the Taskmaster's fighting style, and it's spoilers, so we can say her. That was so hard by the way, in the spoiler free, not to say her all the time.
Yeah, no. Well, let's talk about that, right? Like, you know, okay, so we're talking about this fight with Taskmaster. Later in the movie, it's revealed that it's Dreykov's daughter who Natasha thought she killed, plus Dreykov, way back in Budapest. And we'll talk about Budapest in a sec, but I think that reveal and tying Taskmaster to Natasha's past makes her really relevant, and now I'm interested in seeing where she's gonna go, and we'll talk about that later.
Oh, we'll get to that for sure.
Yeah, we'll get to that. But
but
cool, right? Like, I like
dude.
that.
And I just, here's the thing. In our spoiler free, like I mentioned how she's underutilized, and how I would have rather her be the main villain, or just Taskmaster be the main villain, because I think that character is so huge in the comics, and so to see them sort of sidelined like this was, I think, one of the downfalls of the movie. But I will say, seeing her fight like Captain America and then Black Widow, I saw Black Panther in there obviously later on with the claws. You also see her do Bucky's knife flip move at one point, which is so cool. And then of course Hawkeye with the bow and arrow in the chase scene. And even how it's captured, like with the camera hitting the same angles, like when Taskmaster does the kick thing with the shield and then raises it up. The camera actually moves in that slow pan in the exact same way we see with Steve Rogers whenever he blocks something. Yeah. So it's just so cool to kind of see how they managed to capture the movie in that way, and really focused in on that as part of showing off all the Avengers fighting styles within that character. I don't know. It was great.
Yeah, I agree. I think that her fighting style and her choreography, they definitely implemented as many of the Avengers that we know into that style, as far as like, Black Panther is most recent, right? But like Captain America with the shield, the arrows for sure. I thought that was a delightful sort of surprise and an interesting reveal. I kind of had a sneaky suspicion that it was going to end up being a girl, but I didn't know that it was going to be. Yeah, I just thought it was very interesting that there was no voice to the character. There was no sort of like real identity. And he's surrounded by women. Why would it be a guy? Do you know what I mean? Like, the Red Room is made up of entirely women. So I thought there would have been some sort of reveal. It was just, who was it going to be, really, right?
Right. Yeah. I mean, and can I just point out, like, I think, again, seeing the character in the battles, the fighting styles, and just the amount of acrobatics that they go through and all that stuff is so cool. But it does feel like Marvel recycling a little bit in terms of it's Bucky again. You know what I mean? It's
I guess so.
It's a woman Bucky. You know what I mean?
No,
like,
I agree.
It's very much what we're looking at here.
There's a lot that I think in this story feels very very recycled. While we're just talking about fighting, I do want to, we talked about it extensively, I guess, in the preview show, but another huge shout out to the fighting choreography with Florence Pugh and
oh my gosh,
Scarlett
that
first fight was so raw and so gritty, and it felt very Ultimate Fighter style.
Yes, there's a sequence, right, dude. Like, even just how obviously it was very visceral. There's a moment where Florence Pugh, Yelena is like on the sink or something, right? Yeah. And she just lets out this huge scream and grabs a plate and smashes it over Natasha's head, and then throws Natasha into that door frame, and her leg looks like it's about to break off.
The way that body flies into that door frame, it was unreal. And we talked about it already, like in the press conference. Kate Shortland talks about how the choreography needed to feel a little dirty and more human, and I think that they really achieved that really, really well. So, but then again, that's one fight sequence that stood out as being very, very raw and visceral. But then after that, they all kind of start to kind of take on a more superhero approach when you start getting Taskmaster involved, as we've described already, like his style, mimicking a variety of different Avengers. So, they had different pulses for sure. I was mentioning Budapest and its reference in the plot. And I think that what I really liked too is that they pulled all those like small little Easter eggs from Natasha's past, the Budapest stories, there's arrows in the wall, right? Like, well,
they were playing like tic-tac-toe or whatever.
Yeah, they were playing tic-tac-toe, hiding out in the subway, or when they're at the house, like, what gun does that? Oh, that's not a gun, that's arrows. Like, I just loved how they tied in the Budapest reference that was so heavy in Avengers to her narrative here, and bringing her back. I love that they did a little bit of digging and tried to connect those dots of things like, there's red in your ledger. That's obviously a term that they used. I thought that was really interesting how heavy that was. So it was nice that all the groundwork for Natasha's past was established, and they just kind of plucked these little things and implemented them here, which I thought was really great.
And it really helped to in that scene when you're talking about red in your ledger, like, we know that as a terrible, horrible thing for her. But he
sees it as
blatantly sees it as like such
success.
A good dripping red, and it's just like
your ledger must be dripping red. It was good,
so good, so good.
I don't know. What did you think of this whole chemical compound? Like how they were all sort of. Like,
it did seem a bit easy, didn't it? Like,
it did
just, in terms of how to bring back those characters.
Yeah, like it all felt very, very easy. I don't know. I think the general thing that I would say about this whole plot, after watching it a second time, it seems very safe.
It's fresh but safe, almost.
It's fresh and it's soft enough that it doesn't need to be. Which, again, I think the biggest flaw with this entire movie is time. Kevin was saying it in our spoiler free that time is going to be the biggest detriment to this movie, and I honestly think it is, because of already how much the audience has seen of what is part of Phase 4. This feels like a very lackluster, and not because of anything else other than it just does a disservice to Black Widow's character.
I don't know, man. I felt like this was a really proper send off, and it really sets up Yelena properly for what's to come.
But that's what I mean. That's the bigger purpose of this movie. It wasn't about Black Widow as much as it was about introducing characters like Yelena, Alexei in the Red Guardian, Taskmaster. It just didn't feel like the send-off that Black Widow deserved. The story of Black Widow was just more of a conduit to introduce these characters that I think are going to have a lot more of a longevity in the MCU in Phase 4.
Okay, well, listen, speaking of characters,
let's talk about that.
Let's kind of dive into that. What I'd love to do, honestly, is actually just sort of maybe, we talked extensively about the characters in our spoiler-free, so why don't we do this? For this, let's talk about characters and maybe our favorite plot moments with those characters. Like, what were some standout moments with each character? The one that I want to just kind of jump into, if it's okay, like, I just wanted to shout out, and we talked a little bit about it on the spoiler free, but like when Yelena, when they're in like they're in like some sort of convenience
gas
store,
station,
gas station, and Yelena is just like, she gets down on the ground and she's like, why do you always do this with your hair?
Why do you pose like this?
You're such a poser, and I love how every single time that came up, it was so well done. But I also wanted to just shout out Florence Pugh's acting ability and just her ability to show really funny moments. The moment with the vest when she's like, it's a good vest. Like, I like this vest. And it was just, again, showing like how much she never gets to do anything for herself. But then I just got to shout out as well with her and Alexei sitting in the room when he's trying to apologize to her, and she's sitting there and she's bearing her soul. She's like, it was real for me. You were everything to me. Like for you, I was just some annoying thing that you had to do, a mission, a job. But to me, you were everything. And here you are being the Captain Crimson or whatever. And then he's just like. It's a Red Guardian.
Yeah.
It's so freaking good. I mean, Alexei also is just such a standout. What about, were there any phenomenal moments with Alexei for you?
So, like, just to kind of hone in on Florence for a sec here, like, she was probably one of the most outstanding characters in this movie, and for me, the highlight. Which is very interesting considering she's not the main character, and of course, Natasha Romanoff's Black Widow is the main character. So that being said, she had such range to her acting. She was comical. She was emotional. She knew how to act those drama moments. She brought the action and the choreography. And, to a certain degree, it reminds us that Black Widow is also human because of that connectivity that she has, after seeing her paired up with so many superheroes. So I think she helped ground the film that much more with just how real she was, right? Like when they steal the car and she's like, you can't just steal a car, like, she's like, what do you want me to do, chase him down so I can give it back to him? Unsteal it, right?
Or like when they're sitting there and Natasha's like, put your seatbelt on, and she's like, you're such a mom. Like, it really just shows how connected they are as sisters, even though they've been away from each other for so long, and then they can still have these quips back and forth, and that was very much the part that I did enjoy about the movie, is those human moments, because it does remind us that they're human characters, and also that what they actually did have was family, right? So I think Florence Pugh, like, she killed it. She was the highlight of this movie. Close second to that is Alexei. Oh my gosh,
Alexei was so funny. And just the right amount of superhero, super soldier that we needed in this film, and like especially played by like a big brooding Russian guy, who feels like his country abandoned him and left him left him for dead in the prison system, and like him arm wrestling those guys while he's getting a back tattoo. Like I don't know if that's really a good idea to be doing that, because that's not going to come out right.
He doesn't care. It's on his back. He won't see it.
No, but I love his infinity to want to be associated with Captain America, because he is a super soldier, and he has war stories that he wants to share that don't actually exist. Like, I love when someone calls him out, he's like, he was still in ice, right? And he's just like, are you saying you don't believe me?
Yeah,
right. And or when he sees Natasha, and he's like, so has he asked about me? Has he mentioned me? And she's like, who? Captain America. It's like this, friendly competition, man, like he feels like he's in that same sort of tier, but obviously he's not Steve Rogers, of course, right? So
definitely not. Yeah.
I love that. And so here's another little tidbit that I didn't want to necessarily bring up on the spoiler free, but in that press conference, he did, like, it was asked and it was implied, would you want to come back? And he said he would love to come back, and he sees his character showing up in something like the Falcon and the Winter Soldier sort of time storyline. And I think that is probably the best place for him now that we have that. And I think that's a great idea, with everything that they seem to be planting, in this film and in another series. It's very likely that they could bring him back, right, in some capacity. And I think that's great. And I would love to see more of his character now, right? It was so good, and that's what I mean. Like, they did such a great job of establishing these characters and almost making them a standout in comparison to Black Widow in her own movie. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but again, dude, it's again, you seem to be going back and forth, because I'm hearing you say, there were really great human elements. It reminds us that she's human, and then you're also saying like it didn't feel robust enough, but it did. I think it was perfectly sized for Natasha Romanoff. I mean, even in the MCU, I've found that like Natasha Romanoff, we've seen her progress, definitely. Like from her first introduction in Iron Man, where she's like this sex symbol, and now all the way to what we're getting in this. I don't know, man. I think this was really, really well done, and I think it was appropriately sized, but I just want to quickly get back, because we're having a banter here. I want to get back to the family dynamic. Two things I really want to just call out again. The scene where they're sitting at the table, and you just instantly, like, they're having dinner, and it's just like Melina just says, Natasha, don't slouch. And then and then Alexei, when he's like, I just got out of prison and I have a lot of energy. And you just see Natasha and Yelena just like, oh my God, like, why? Like, why are you doing this? And then I also wanted to shout out I really love when movies, and I mentioned this in the spoiler free, I think, or no, I think maybe I'm thinking of a different podcast now. We've done a million podcasts in the past week. I really do like when movies have that sort of bookending in the narrative, in the writing, right? And so at the beginning of this movie, you see the two of them playing and they're upside down. We're both and then they're upside down. Yeah, and we're both upside down. And so when at the end, when Yelena says we're both upside down, I mean, that was so lovely. I was and then she's like, it was real for me too. Yeah, I welled up. Like, again, I think that's the best part of this movie.
For sure. That is the best part of this movie. Yeah. Is the best part of the movie. I'm not saying that. But I'm saying that the plot and the elements around it, the villain, the sort of the issue that's going on here. Sure. Not as strong. It felt much thinner than these real elements that we got, right? And like Nate, you're absolutely right. Like, it's that family connection is what drives this movie forward, for me at least. Those are the parts that I like. But yeah, that dinner table scene is fantastic. It's so I love how she's trying to be tough. Like, listen, this is what's gonna happen, and then Melina interjects, Natasha, don't slouch, right? Like, and it's like, hey, you're not my mom. You don't tell me, I'm not slouching, right? So I just love though that, like, in that moment, you can see your own sort of like family dinners with your siblings and the parents bickering, kids bickering and stuff like that. Again, the human element to this was by far the standout, and these characters brought it. That's the highlight here is that the characters brought the dynamic and helped elevate this story, making it far more interesting. I think that this is a well casted movie and well acted, apart from Ray Winstone, who plays Dreykov. We dragged him through the mud quite a bit in our spoiler free. But if you want to, if there's anything else you want to say, that's just it. He was the weakest part. The movie does not need him, and I think if you've seen the movie, if you've watched it, you would probably
hopefully
agree
you have by now.
Yeah, hopefully you have. But it wasn't necessary. Taskmaster was more of a threat, and it's just a matter of how much depth they wanted to give. But you see the reason why they had him around, so that they could justify that of Taskmaster being a woman and having a family connectivity to him
with the daughter. Yeah, very cool. Okay, well, listen, let's get to that post-credit scene, and because it really wouldn't be an MCU discussion if we didn't talk about the bigger picture. So, as this movie was meant to kick off Phase 4 for the MCU films, and now that things have sort of been shifted around and we get that intriguing end credit scene, let's talk about some of the implications we think it might have for the MCU going forward. So, I mean, again, like, just for a synopsis, like, you see in the post-credit scene, Yelena gets out of a truck. Her dog's named Fanny, by the way, which was one of the alter egos that Mason was trying to pawn off on Natasha, which I thought was such a cool little callback and really cute. And like, she has a dog, which she said she was going to get a dog. And but she goes up to the gravestone, which is, by the way, I believe it's in the same graveyard as her real mom.
Well, yeah, there was mention of the tree with the
pink on it, and you see that. Yeah. So I think that's where she was. She, of course, she has a really heartfelt moment, and then you just hear Val blowing her nose, and just not because she's crying, but because it's allergy season. She says, I wanted to deliver you your next target, and they kind of quip about, she wishes Yelena's like, I deserve a raise or whatever. So clearly she's working with Val, or she has been working with Val, because she can never get out of that lifestyle. And so she hands her an older iPad, and it's got a picture of Hawkeye on it. So Justin, well, he's a hot guy, because Val literally says the last line of the movie, she says, I think he's pretty cute. And so what do you think this means going forward for the MCU?
Well, I think they've established that maybe the villain in not the villain, but I guess the antagonist, if you will, in Hawkeye's series will be Yelena. Yeah. I think that effectively establishes that, or she'll have some sort of involvement in that series. Yeah. We had talked about when we saw the Falcon and Winter Soldier in the introduction of Valentina as being kind of like lackluster, if you will.
Underwhelming. Yeah.
Underwhelming, right? Yeah. I think, imagine if we saw this first. Wouldn't this have been more underwhelming? Like, I don't know, like...
Yeah.
Like, they didn't really give any sort of background or justification as to who she was, not like they did in, the Falcon and Winter Soldier.
Do you think maybe there were parts of this were recut?
Well, that's what I'm wondering, right? Like, I'm wondering
to
if
make it seem more seamless throughout, right?
Right.
There's that moment where she does the whistle that they did when they were kids, and honestly, I'm not gonna lie, I thought we were gonna hear the whistle back. Like, I thought the big pop was going to be. I completely forgot that we were gonna see Val in this movie because I remember we talked about it during Falcon and Winter Soldier, and so like. When it was Val, I was like, oh, okay, it's not Natasha back alive again. I don't know how they would explain that, but I will say it is cool. I think it is a really cool dynamic. I think it works. I think she, having them work together and establish that quickly, I think is going to be really cool. And I also wonder if it means that we're going to get any sort of connection to Taskmaster and Secret Agent or whatever his name is, U.S. Agent or
U.S. Agent. No, I think
U.S. Agent.
So I think seeing Val is more of that implication, right? Like I think she's going to be the Nick Fury of this next phase that's
the
bringing
Thunderbolts.
together. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Like a band of misfit heroes that are trying to do right. You know what I mean? Like we got Zemo already, right? We have U.S. Agent. We'll have Taskmaster. We'll have Yelena, right?
Yeah.
Like, so it's like
pretty dope team, right? To be going up against whoever
else they decide to incorporate into it. But it's just, in terms of those implications.
Are all the widows also a part of that regiment? Like,
who knows?
Because you think about it, they're following Yelena, right?
So
now
I'm wondering if we're not going to see some of them pop up in stories that are going to either, find their way or revert back into being a hired weapon. Do you know what I mean?
I mean, honestly, it is one of those things where like clearly Yelena can't not be doing that lifestyle. Like she had the opportunity to not work with Val, but clearly she still does. Maybe there's aspects about it that she unfortunately misses.
And how long?
A little bit of Stockholm syndrome, right?
Sure.
Of like falling in love with that lifestyle when she actually hates it. And for how long, and what is the reasoning behind it? So I'm really excited to see how that all sort of connects. I'm wondering if this is also the last time that we see Mason. We talked about that in the preview.
I don't think so.
Do you think Mason's going to come back for some reason?
I think that it's safe to say that he potentially could come back. But his character was minor.
It's pretty minor,
right?
Yeah.
If he was doing it, he'd probably
we'll get a whole series on Disney Plus.
Yeah,
no.
Right? But yeah, like, and that end credit scene has some really deep implications to the MCU and the Phase 4 and what they're doing. I feel like given what we've already seen with like the multiverse, and we're now in Loki, mirrored that with the sort of the Falcon and Winter Soldier, and now this film with the real world. I think we're seeing two sort of sets of things happening: stuff on Earth versus stuff galactic, right? And
Sure.
I think at some point those are going to collide, whether that be something like the Eternals or what I mean, like just some. I feel like there's going to be some sort of convergence of these elements, right? Because when it comes to the Disney Plus series, we still have things like Ms. Marvel on the horizon, She-Hulk. Right,
Yeah.
You have the Hawkeye series. Those are probably going to be more of the real world stories versus the sort of galactic, multiverse sort of stuff.
And I also wonder, is how long until Yelena is no longer the antagonist to Hawkeye and to his daughter? Like I'm wondering, how long until she becomes, a good character. So it would be kind of interesting to see, if that for if they do really focus in on, is this the passing of the torch phase as well, right? So it's multiverses. The first half is multiverses, and the second half is passing of the torch, moving to, bringing in some of these young Avengers, right? Bringing in your Miss Marvel, bringing in your Lena, bringing in your
the new ensemble team,
right? Your Patriot, right? Bringing in Eli Bradley to kind of really start to move forward, and maybe that's in a new Disney Plus series, but
sure.
I
feel like
think as
the
far
ons-
as,
I feel like as an ensemble, we'll see that as a film, right?
yeah.
Like that's going to be more of a film thing, and I think they've already made that pretty clear in terms of like how Feige has talked about theater experiences versus the Disney Plus streaming properties. But I think the one thing is that the passing of the torch mentality. I like that it's a little less on the nose, but like it's just implied as we get introduced to new heroes that
Sure.
we as fans of comics and their stories know where they might be heading with the sort of selection of heroes they want to tell stories with. So like Young Avengers or
these heroes either retire or they die,
Right.
and that's their natural way of bringing them in. So,
Right.
but no, like I gotta say, like as we kind of wrap up this here, I'm really, 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 really stoked to see more of Florence Pugh in the MCU.
Me too.
To see Elaine again. And do you think we're gonna get to see Alexei again?
I think so. I honestly think that he would be amazing to bring into something like the Falcon and Winter Soldier. Like they were already talking about other super soldiers, right?
Yeah.
So like, the fact that Russia has their own super soldier, that can feed into that story, whether it's in Cap 4 or, a series. But I think there's enough there that I would like to see a series about Alexei. I could. David Harbour is fantastic. He could carry that. He could totally carry that, and it doesn't need to be a long one. Think of Book of Boba Fett. I think it's like 4 or 6 episodes, right? Like not even. So it's like you could tell a small story because people loved his character. I think. Well, I think people will love his character. We don't know yet, but I feel like a lot of people are going to love his character, and he's already Hopper, and everyone loves Hopper, right? So it's like you can't not like it was nice to see him kind of flex a different muscle, and sure, albeit the Russian accent's a little thick, but he did a good job with it, and maybe
it didn't bother me.
maybe the two of them, Florence Pugh and David Harbour, they sort of toned down the accent. Just like
as they go,
sure. As they go, like, kind of like Wanda. a Wanda Maximoff did.
Sure.
So, but
Okay.
I think it's very likely we'll see him, but we'll see him in a very unlikely way.
Okay, all right. Well, listen. At the end of these spoiler-filled reviews, more than just does it live up to the hype, we like to give our final thoughts and our scores. So we're going to be scoring this movie on a scale of 1 to 5 widows. Justin, what did you want to rate this movie?
Well, I think I'm going to be giving this score. It's a little bit lower than probably what you're anticipating here, and that really just stems from the fact of a couple different things. Like I've talked in great detail here how I liked the characters that were established in this, the real human approach to telling the story. However, I think all of this kind of outshined the point of trying to give Black Widow her film. I think that this was a very subpar send off for the character, and it just didn't feel like it was really intended for that.
Okay.
And for that reason, I'm going to give this film a 3.8 out of 5 widows.
Whew. All right. Under 4, really?
Yeah. Like, honestly, it really stems from the fact that this movie felt more like it was intentional to set things up rather than being that send-off or that really focused story about Black Widow. Now, don't get me wrong. I liked what they implied and what they layered in, but it just didn't feel like it was a movie about Black Widow. And you want to also factor in the whole reality that this is just an ill-timed solo story. It feels like they're just doing it for the sake of doing it rather than it being purposeful. I wanted it to actually have a meaning to it. I just don't know if what we're going to remember about this movie is Black Widow's story or if it's going to be these characters. I don't know. Maybe I'm crazy.
No worries. All right. Well, I mentioned this in our spoiler-free review, but I'm just really happy with how the movie turned out. I think Natasha Romanoff, again, hasn't always been a standout for me in the MCU. Between me growing to love Scarlett Johansson more and more, trust me, like her acting in early MCU movies for me was very. It wasn't good. It wasn't. I don't think it was that great. And I just think obviously she's grown up quite a bit as an actor as well, and so. I've grown to love her more and more with her work, like in Jojo Rabbit and everything like that. So, I think this movie confidently does what it sets out to do. And it's a solid movie that, as I said, elevates Natasha Romanoff while setting up her successor in Yelena Belova. So I think it lives up there as one of the better solo adventures, as an origin story in the MCU.
Sure,
And I think the action and the spectacle live up to movies like Mission Impossible and the Bourne films, and like that's a big deal when you're talking about the action sequences. And I understand that's separate from the story for you. I had a ton of fun with the new characters, and obviously a few of them stole the spotlight, as we've clearly been talking about. But I think the movie still felt like a proper send-off for her character. What brings this movie down for me is the copy and paste Bond villain, Dreykov, and of course the misuse and underutilization of Taskmaster, cutting that character down to, again, essentially a female Winter Soldier. So again, Taskmaster, don't get me wrong, was so cool, and I think they could have found a better way to focus on her instead of making her a side villain. So for all these reasons, I'm going to give Black Widow a 4 out of 5 widows. Fantastic stuff. Yeah.
Nice. Awesome.
Good job, Marvel. All right, well, we're going to wrap up. And Justin, I think earlier you were saying Budapest. By the way, dude, it's Budapest, okay? Get it right.
Oh, right.
Well,
Budapest. Yeah,
that's it for us. We hope you enjoyed this spoiler-filled discussion for Marvel's Black Widow. And if you did, be sure to leave us a 5-star review, because we do everything we can for you girls.
That was good.
Was that good?
Yeah.
Can I be in the movie?
Yeah, your Russian accent. Yeah. Well, also, if you enjoyed this episode and you want to check out more that us geeks are up to, we have a lot to offer. A lot of content on the podcast right now, along with our regular episodes. We have 2 watch clubs ongoing, where we recap the latest of Star Wars: The Bad Batch. I think we just launched episode 10. We're going to be hitting 11 this coming Monday, but episode 10's out for your enjoyment. And we have Loki, our ongoing Loki watch club as well. We dropped episode 4 last week, and by the time this episode's out, episode 5 should be out.
Yeah, it'll be out. I don't know if our episode for Watch Club will be out. We'll see. We're going to try.
We'll see.
We're going to try.
We'll see.
I'm stoked,
we'll see,
though, because as of this recording, it's tomorrow. And if you've been following Loki, holy crap.
Yeah,
dude,
you're going to want to tune in for that one, because we're going to have Darcy on, and he's our Marvel expert. So it's going to be good to have him on for the penultimate. Not only that, we do have our reviews for Pixar's Luca and Disney's Monsters at Work, and with even more review and reactions on the way. So make sure you're subscribing, guys, because Geekcentric Podcast, we were recently just featured this week in New and Noteworthy, which is pretty cool.
That's kind of neat.
Cool. Yeah, we showed up in the New and Noteworthy. I had to have my wife, who doesn't have the podcast app, just list the podcast. I'm like, can you download this app and check? And she's like, no, yeah, you're there.
Dope.
So yeah, it's pretty cool. It feels good. So yeah, a lot of content coming.
Very cool. Well, listen, again, we hope you enjoyed all this, but for now, much like Natasha, we have to board the Quinjet, and rejoin our other family. So, Justin, thank you so much for joining me for today's spoiler-filled review. And as we say, love ya.
Peace.